Welcome, everybody, to the Bartenders Jukebox podcast. I have the one and only Mr. Russell Davis on here with me. If you don't know who Russell Davis is, he's been on, shows like Bar Rescue and stuff like that. He also had his own show on Netflix, Drink Masters, and he's been doing some other stuff these days, and we'll get into all that. But how you doing, Russell?
Pretty good, man. Coming at you from Costa Rica. How are you doing?
Costa Rica, man, what's the temperature like right there?
Perfect. A lot of rain. We're in the rainy season, so it rains about 7 times a day. But pretty nice. Not too hot, not too cold.
Right on, man. Yeah, up here where I'm at, and I'm northern PA, so we're dealing with some high 30s and some rain right now.
Oof, oof, oof.
Yeah, definitely bundling up weather, that's for sure. All right, man. So you were on Bar Rescue and you worked with Mr. Taffer. How was that experience for you?
It was a learning process of learning to understand how to become famous, I guess.
Okay.
And also your own value. It was a very transformative time for me, and what I would become for myself and for others, as far as being lifted up into the public eye, and what was the culmination of a lot of things in my career at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good experience. I did. I can't remember exactly how many episodes I ended up doing in the end, because some episodes at the end were like recuts of my old episodes, or me returning like back to the bar because I would go in for a second. But I think it was like 16 or 18 different episodes I ended up being featured in. And it was really good. But it was also my time to leave. I had a lot of positive experiences on the show, but then also there's the reality television aspect of it, and I really needed to form something different in my life at the time, and be something different for myself. And so it was a good experience. And John's an interesting guy to work with and work for.
I can imagine.
But I haven't talked to him in quite a while. But yeah, man, it was just a good run. It was a good run.
Well, I know when I reached out to you, one of the things I was going to say on the podcast about talking about men's mental health, which brings up a good point. Being thrown into the limelight like that and having to readjust your whole lifestyle, how did you handle that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, interestingly, I would say that. I became a really popular part on the show, and so I was being used a lot, and I was also elevated by people in a way that I wasn't really expecting. It's interesting because I had hoped for it. We'd all hoped to be something spectacular for people, and but I wasn't really, I guess, prepared for it, nor did I consider who I was myself too. I still had a lot of growing up to do. So it was the first time that after years and years and years, I had a lot of success, and it was it's always a little dangerous to give a bartender a bunch of money or a bunch of success, and I didn't do the wisest things with that money nor that success. I had a lot of learning lessons. It's interesting because it becomes like such a roller coaster. At least for me, it was, because my episodes aired and then certain things just really hit on the show at that time. And so it was this intersection that we were like, the top business reality show in the United States or the world or something like that at the time. And so it was interesting because you have these people that you're starting to become famous. People recognize who you are, or they recognize your voice or something. You sign autographs, and at the same time, people are calling you a legend, and it feels very much like like the gravy with the song "The Gravy Train" by Pink Floyd. Have a cigar. Hey kid, have a cigar. You're gonna go far. It really does feel like that way. But I surrounded myself with a bunch of people I probably shouldn't have too. I was struggling to put in together teams. whether it be lawyers or business partners or different things to help me handle the brunt of the business and to actually grow what I was doing too. And that would lead to some major mistakes and business partners and different things that I chose. That would lead to me being taken just full advantage of, and quite frankly left high and dry on a lot of things after I had helped to grow and grow them, build them, and hand them off to the people. And so, there's just a lot of learning lessons that were there, and a lot of things that I would do different. But it's interesting because I took this time off a few years ago to take. I took some hits, and then I needed to heal. And I was really hurt by the world for a lot of things, and I just needed to escape and do that, and that's what I kind of did. But I feel like what's happening to me now, which is this beginning of a comeback of sorts. I'm glad I made the mistakes in the past and have the opportunities that I'm having now because I know the version of myself that I need to be this time, if that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense.
Yeah, and to come back with wisdom and being more of an older man now that understands what my positioning is for that role, that job, that duty when you're a public figure.
Yeah.
So very much.
So you said you were in Costa Rica. So what took you down to Costa Rica?
I was studying for many years. Pretty much starting about 2014 when I left the show, I started traveling around the world to study obscure, ancient, and indigenous drinking culture, beverages, rituals, recipes before they were lost. Trying to do things to capture the ancestral and native things that we were losing before they were gone, right? And so, I was kind of secretly doing that and going into the jungles or somewhere in the world and doing work like that. And then on the back end, sneaking in to do an appearance on The View or, to come host the Tequila and Rum Festival in Rhode Island. So I was always living this like double life of what I was trying to do. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't know that for many, many years that I was actually doing that. And I enjoyed that too. It made me feel a little bit more like a James Bond spy type of guy that was coming out and doing television and like secretly going and doing this stuff. And so Costa Rica was one of the first places that I came here. And I actually started studying indigenous and doing more research in the jungle back in 2015. Started a very important trek. And so it's one of these places that it's always been in my heart. And the indigenous here are what I consider to be some of the most important in the world. Specifically being that the Bribri here are one of, if not the only tribe that wasn't conquered by the Spanish and resides on that same land that is inherently got many secrets to it, and a sacred land. And so for me, it's an important area of the world. And then when you have so much life and biodiversity in the Osha Peninsula, you're dealing with some of the best flavors and thing. You've never had a banana until you've been to Costa Rica and tried a Costa Rica banana. So to me, it's just this fabulous spot in the world.
Yeah. All right. So you said you went on the trek to try to kind of save some of the recipes or the heritage of the different alcohols that have come across in the indigenous tribes. So what are some of the things that you've come across, researching, studying, and trying to preserve?
I mean, things cross all. I mean, that's a broad one. Everything. Everything. Everything that's there's a huge connection in culture that is important to capture within culinary. The idea is that there's three real human necessities we have, which is to breathe, sleep, and to consume. And to consume is either to drink or to eat. And only of one of those three things we're half to taught to be done, which is to consume. And of that consumption, drinking is that first thing, right? So to me, it's very much the first ritual. It's the first thing that we're taught how to do. So there's a lot of secrets. There's a lot of connection, ancient connection in the the techniques or what we do within drinking culture that lead us to our true origins and ancestral, beginnings than what a lot of people think or understand. And so, like, when you take a culture like in Kenya and you realize that this lake is where the first war was around, Lake Turkana, and that this first war was probably fought over water, and then these cups and everything are volcanic and they're not making it at the Hikara Gourd, you start realizing things like, okay, well, then they were, these guys were probably here. They weren't traveling because they have these big rock cups, and then you can study things from there. And, I've come across everything from, crazy fermented milk drinks that were mixed with sausage fruit and ash, like charcoal ash.
Yeah.
To chichas made of maize with little fish in them, served in jicaras. I've come across a lot of interesting stuff. Vino de Coyol, which is a palm that you ferment into the trunk of the palm when you cut down during the moonlight. And when you step out into the sun the next day, your body has an interesting reaction and you kind of get re-drunk. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's really, 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 really cool, that I've come across, and including just even like ancient medicines of psychedelic stuff that's been extracted using the honeys of things, And so there's a lot of cool stuff that I've come across. But to me, the coolest thing is to like track down those, well, why is there that ash in this fermented milk drink? Why is this important that they cut this tree down during the moonlight for this thing? Why, so
why did they do what they did?
Yeah, and why? Because once you start asking the why, you get into that culturally significant portion of like why that it tells you a truth, to the history of that culture, that drink, why it's there, that charcoal's there because you're probably going to get sick from it and it's needing to filter it or settle it in your stomach, So it's, there's always truth behind the reason that we do things.
It's back in those days too, like through all the generations and stuff like that, going back through history, they didn't have technology like we have nowadays where they could say, well, this is going to do this to you. I mean, it was all trial and error for them.
Well, I mean, and quite frankly, we're still in trial and error form, It's interesting because like, even take a medicine that we do now, sometimes we'll take that medicine for years and not know what really it does to us until further on down the road, and we're even in, as much as we think that we've got it down, we don't, and there's so much of this work that makes me believe that, the more of this work that I do, right, the more stuff that I also help to recover and secure ancient secret sites for an Indigenous Council of Leaders, which I've been doing for philanthropy for the past 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So I'm the first guy in on these expeditions and stuff and that was my service to the Indigenous, when I had to step away from the industry and heal. And so I'm the first man into sometimes these expeditions or these things to these ancient locations to see stuff. And I'll be honest, the one thing that I've started to realize is that our technology now is not as advanced as what they had a long time ago. We just don't understand what they had. And it's interesting because you take like a beverage like ayahuasca, which has at least 2 ingredients, but there's actually an argument about having more, 3 ingredients, what those are, but at least 2 of those ingredients are a necessity to come together to even create the psychedelic DMT experience that you're going to have. And actually it's a third ingredient, but we're not going to jump into that. But one of these ingredients doesn't work without the other. And if you think about that, like, we're still figuring out how things work on their own, right? How do these ancient cultures take something like ayahuasca and find out that this thing actually works in this way, but only combined with this other thing from the jungle, right? And that's starting to get really crazy. And you're going, whoa, how, it's one thing to figure out this. It's another thing to figure out like the combination. How did they do that? And there's no doubt in my mind that we're dealing with cultures and civilizations that were much more advanced than we were. So
Yeah, I mean, I was a look at Machu Picchu. They had running water there, and it's
Yeah.
like one of the oldest sites that they found. And it's always been questioned with pyramids and stuff like that. Uh, just different aspects of them. Were they picking up energy? Why are they set to the speed of light? Why are the exact coordinates to it? Like, how did that stuff happen at the same time?
Yeah, and I mean, look at the Costa Rican spheres. I mean, even down to what bartending and everything, was in its beginning, which is alchemy.
Hmm.
Alchem is so many of these sites, these ancient sites like Tikal, like the pyramids, like many of these sites, they align under very specific constellations or star systems that would have allowed certain temperatures to be known, or to know it's a certain time of the year, and to practice ancient sciences. Temple is
Yeah.
actually the short term for temperature. And one of these important star systems that many of them are aligned underneath is the Pleiades, right? And
Yep.
so even take the word alchemical or alchemy. Chem was the ancient Arabic word for Pleiades. And so alchemy or alchemical meant to the Pleiades. So even the words that our own industry is structured underneath, alcohol, alchemy, are based upon the ancient words of the indigenous for even the alignment of these structures underneath these star systems to be able to do some things like fermentation. So yeah, there's an ancient tie to these things, and the fact that, like, if you really take back what we do, a bartender was something much more important ancestrally. Ancestrally, we would have been the preachers, the shamans, also the judge in some cultures, because
Yep.
a bar was merely a barricade between the alcohol and the guest in the pub or the public house or the church, the temple, when it was everything.
Hmm.
And so that gathering point and that job that we do is a very sacred job. And 2,000 years ago, you know, 2,000 years ago, in order to allow people to gather in mass, right? Because everyone had their own water, their own tribes. They couldn't even drink each other's water. They had their own biologies. But in order to gather people in mass, you had to have someone that understood the fermentation of wine, so they could add it to water to sterilize it, to allow people to gather. So our job
Yeah.
is very sacred.
So anybody that's out there working in a nightclub right now and you're serving, it's nickel night or whatever, just remember. Just remember.
Jesus might have been a bartender.
Yes. Yes. Oh man. All right. So here's a question for you. What is your favorite cocktail to make?
Your next one.
My next one.
Yeah, whoever's next one.
I like that answer. That's a good one, man.
I haven't made a cocktail in a long time, but yeah, that was the answer. The next one.
That's a perfect answer. So any bartenders watching this, just remember that. They ask you that's what you say right there. Oh man. So in getting into what you're doing now, have you been able to get to try and taste some of those ancient flavors?
Oh yeah. I've tried and seen things that no one to very few people in the world have tried or seen sometimes. I mean,
What has been the most obscure so far for you?
The most obscure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the most obscure things that I've tried that have been like things that I've eaten and things like that would be those things that are either deep in the jungles, in the territories that are on ancient places that, that you can't really get to too much. And quite frankly, sometimes I don't even know what these things are. So a lot of times when I try these things out there, it's like, I have no idea what this is. It might be, even down to the meats that we eat. You'll be handed this like little hand of this animal from the jungle, and you're like, I have no idea what this animal is. So there's just a lot of that. There's a lot of these like learning, to try to understand what is as close to certain these things are that you're not understanding what they are. Like there was this one time that I was deep in the jungle, and they took me to this one plant that was near this ancient grain, and they were like, "You got to try this ancient grain. We don't grow it anymore." And it's it was on this like little like buddy almost like fluffy flower type of thing that was growing into almost like chia pods. And I remember tasting it and it being like berries, and I'm just thinking, how is this the grain? And I was so ready for it to taste like a grain. Yeah. It'd be poppy like pomegranate and berries. So there's these things that I can't even really describe sometimes that don't even have names, right? And then but the best flavors that I've had are whenever it's something we think we've had, right? Mm-hmm. But you've never had it from that place of origin, right? So like a true fig banana deep in the jungle of Central America, where bananas, come from. You've never had a banana until you tried one of those, and you think you've had your entire life, and you try one of these, and you're like, oh my God, that's what a banana is supposed to taste like. It's kind of like potatoes in Peru. You go deep into those Andes mountains, and you're with the Quechua Incan, and you try those potatoes, which is one of the points of origin of the potato, mm-hmm. and you're just, fuck. This is a potato. This tastes nothing like what we thought a potato tasted like, And so for me, it's always those pure ancient flavors of what we think we've had before rediscovered are my favorite. Yeah.
I remember from a few years ago, I was watching an episode of No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain, and he was in Peru. Now, I can't remember the name of it. There was a pink drink that they would make. That was native to Peru. Do you know what that is by chance?
There's a lot of stuff, but I can't think of it. But if there's anything that's native to Peru, and it's like pink, and Anthony Bourdain was drinking it. I don't remember that episode per se. I don't know. I feel like I might have remembered a glimpse, but yeah, I don't know. It could be the leche de tigre. Like if I remember correctly, he might have even drank the juice from the ceviche, which is like the leche de tigre, and he mixed it into a drink, and that might have been it, I think, but I'm not positive. There's a lot of pink drinks around the world, unfortunately. Well, fortunately too. Some of them are really good. Yeah. But I don't remember that one per se. Yeah, there's a lot of when it comes to Peru, you're talking about a gigantic country, just a fucking huge country, right? Mixture of many different cultures, but you very much get the snows of the Andes in one parts of it, and then you get the burning hot jungles of the Amazon in other parts of it. So the array of everything there is nuts. There's also other pink drinks like the purple corn chicha that they have, chicha morada, and different things, and hibiscus teas and stuff. So it could be anything, but I would be willing to bet it was like the leche de tigre, probably.
That sounds familiar, so I think you might be right on that.
Nice. If I nailed it with the leche de tigre, I'm gonna put myself, pat my back on that one. So.
All right, man. So, Wishka.org. Tell me about that.
So, it's the revamp. It's my comeback company. Let's put it that way. My comeback company. So, years ago, I had a successful consulting company called Limited Liabilities. That is what I ended up losing in a hack and leaving behind from some very bad partnership when I was going through an attack of things that was not my fault. Let's put it that way. And so that was in a time when I was younger and cared a lot about money and different kind of consultants as well. And so after taking years to be on a spiritual journey and to heal and be in service to the indigenous and give away all of my money to just heal myself, which is what I've done. I sold everything and gave away all my money and into the indigenous efforts. And so
much respect for that, by the way.
Oh,
much respect.
Thanks, man. I felt like it was sometimes we have to wash ourselves, clean ourselves of our old selves in our old world, right? Because such a change. And that was what was one of the necessities to me was, and I really was confusing a lot of people, I think, for 3 years seeing this guy risking his life in the jungles doing weird stuff and just giving away all his money, not realizing where I'm earning it.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So I had to do all that. I had to do that. And so Wishka.org is Wishka Global actually is the name of the company. It's my company for a bar, beverage, consulting, collaboration, and creative group. That is basically the revamp of my old company. It's me now. It's the spirit me coming back to the bar and beverage industry with all of this ancestral, indigenous, native knowledge and connections and studies in trying to utilize it in a very different aspect to the bar and beverage industry and hospitality industry. Trying to really bring a spiritual side of things to what we do, being that we are dealing with spirits. So it's we need to have much more of a respect to what we're doing and what this job is becoming, and alcohol in general, and drinking into what it needs to be. And so that's what this company is, and also a vein to be able to operate my philanthropy, my philanthropic efforts as I do this as well. And so, yeah, it's Wishka is the name that the Indigenous have been calling me for the past few years. Quebec word for cat, so it means cat, and they were calling me cat because of my blue eyes. And so it's a combination of two things, the new me and mixing with my old business, if that makes sense. So
100%, 100%. All right, so you had brought this up earlier. You had said about certain kinds of psychedelics and cultures and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, isn't it in Costa Rica where they actually harvest the psychedelic honey from the high caves?
I don't. Are you talking about the mad honey?
I think that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I don't know if they do it here in Costa Rica. They do it in a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of different types of psychedelic honeys too. So it just depends on which one you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's actually the honey and the bee was a really good way to clean psychedelics, to make them more ingestible. If you think about it, using that bee to like extract the chemical from the plant or the flower and then creating the honey from it. It's really an ancient way of making like that ride and that extraction of whatever the drug is much cleaner for your body. So I don't remember if it's here, but I mean, at this point you can get anything here though too. So like I've seen the mad honey being sold here, but I don't remember if it's from here. But there's different types of that honey that's not necessarily coming from the caves too. That there's other methods. Yeah, the Indigenous had a lot of crazy ways that were really cool to study. But
when you started getting into this, what is that one thing when you started working with the Indigenous people that just blew your mind?
Oh man, I mean a lot of things. I mean the one of the things that was very mind-blowing for me at first was I used to carry around Zippo lighters with me to be as gifts to like the Indigenous elders, right? So like when I would go into a location, like offering the Zippo lighter. And if you think about it, that's really cool for them to like have fire, in that way, right? And then like, when you come back the next time, you bring them the butane. And when you come back the next time, you bring them the flint, so you always have this like continuing gift that's an offering to open up. But, one of the first things that was really interesting to me was the one of my first times to do that and present that was seeing this Indigenous man grab this Zippo and not know what to do with it, like not know how to open it, what it was, and we weren't that far into Indigenous territory at this point. We were, this was specifically in Costa Rica 10 years ago, but it was a small helicopter ride into the jungle, but we're not like that far away from what I consider to be like civilization, Yeah. So it was really amazing to see this person who couldn't even know what a Zippo was, and trying to figure out in his hands what it was, and then take it from his hands and light it, and then him be like, "Whoa," and like seeing him show it off to all of his buddies the rest of the day. And so, for me, there was something really beautiful about that moment that helped me like really understand, some things. It's also the same, it was interesting because that specific man and those people just kind of showed me a lot of interesting windows at the beginning of my journey into this world. So, another thing was I remember being in his hut house. He's like, "Hey, let me show you my hut," and he takes us up and we walk 2 hours to his hut. And it's very simple, and there's a fire on the inside and whatnot. And he's like, hey, do you want to see my machine, right? ¿Quieres, ves mi máquina, and then I'm like, yeah, you'd love to see your machine, right? And so he walks us over this table. There's only one table. But he's like, lifts up this like this rag that was on over this like corn grinder, right? So it's like this rusty corn grinder that's on this table, right? And he lifts up this towel and he shows this rusty corn grinder and it's like, this is my machine. Esto es mi máquina, and I'm like, oh man, how cool, what's the name of this machine? And he looks at me and he's like, machine. And I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, I get it. It's the only fucking machine. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Right? And so there was a lot of those like experiences like that, where you're constantly learning just what and who people are and how different your life is than what you understand. And from that life, and that those kind of experiences for me were the first that were just the most mind blowing, right? Dealing with tribes who couldn't speak English and barely any Spanish, but they knew.
I can imagine at first, like that barrier right there, just being completely like unaware of the language at all.
Oh, that's what's funny too, is that I'm like a lot of the times the only white guy in the jungle with all these indigenous dudes, no translator, and ugly Spanish, and it's sometimes the most fun times in my life, right? Is to be in that situation of just being like, it's only my balls, my brains, and my heart that's going to protect me out here, and I made some of the best friends of my life, even though we can't necessarily speak to each other directly all the time.
Sometimes it doesn't take any words whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true too, man. You'd be so surprised how you communicate. Like there was one group of guys that I was leading these well, it was a trail along the expedition, but I was leading the horses and everybody, bringing back these vaccines and supplies that we had just gotten delivered back into civilization, bringing them back. And, I was at the front, and then the Quebecer guys were at the back of the long line of people and stuff. And they had heard me singing Bon Jovi songs at one point. And somehow they didn't speak the English. They knew very ugly Spanish like me. Knew ugly Spanish, and they knew Bon Jovi songs, right? Mm-hmm. And so our literal way of communicating to check on each other was me. I would sing "Shot Through the Heart" from the front of the thing, and then from the back of them, you have these Quebecer guys that would sing "And You're to Blame" to make sure that everyone was good in the jungle. And that was really a beautiful experience for me. So
man, that's awesome, man. That is absolutely awesome. Looking back on your career and stuff like that, let me change the question altogether. Looking back, Drink Masters, tell me your experiences with that.
Well, I mean, I was brought on. Drink Masters happened because of a show idea that Tim and I were talking about 9 years ago, 9 years before the show was made. Tim Warren was Boomerang Productions with he used to be the executive producer of Bar Rescue, so him and I worked with each other a lot. And actually, Drink Masters was birthed on a very drunken night of him and I going out and to the Aviary in Chicago when we were filming in Chicago. And it'd be years later that he would call me back and ask me to help develop and create the show. And incidentally, I was supposed to judge it and be on camera too. So my experience, I was there rewriting and rewriting everything that got the pitch picked up for Netflix, and I was supposed to be bigger in the show, but I actually kind of got screwed over. I got arrested for domestic violence for something I didn't do by someone trying to equally get at me for money when I was signing that show. So I was a little bit of a victim of my own success on that, and a girl tried to take advantage of that right when it got picked up. She successfully ruined some things for me, and it really broke my heart. I would find some things out later. Everything would be dropped because none of the things actually happened, and there was witnesses. It was just terrible what happened.
Yeah.
And I would find out a lot of things. Like, I was in a relationship with this girl, and I would find out even afterwards that even the relationship wasn't real, and that I had been targeted from the very beginning for my money. And success. And, oh, dude, it was tough, man. I was finding, like, this is a point in my life that when all this was crashing down, I almost killed myself. I really did. I just now started kind of telling people and talking about this, but it was really, really tough because my show got picked up. I got dropped from the show. I didn't even get and I didn't get screwed over by Tim or anybody, but I did get kind of messed around by the other production company. And I didn't get the full credit that I had. I didn't get I kind of just got screwed across the board on a lot of stuff. And I was so sad about things that I didn't really fight it. I just needed to, like, escape and go heal and be in a cave for a little while. And that's what I did, so I really, it was weird because I had signed the show and I got dropped from it, and then certain things happened in my life that I came a bunch of money. I was doing well for myself for what I had sold, my businesses, and I was at a point where I had a lot of money in my hands, and I'm just like, fuck, I should go give all this away. And so that's what I really did for the past 3 years. Was deciding that I was going to go give away all my money and just wash myself of all this stuff and heal and put myself in service to the indigenous. That I didn't want to be the victim of this cancel culture, which is inherently what I was. I became canceled in my own way, but I also believe that things always came out in the wash. And so that's what I was always waiting on, is just the wash. Understanding that the truth always comes out, and to keep my head down and just to be a good man. And that's what I did. But I
right out the storm there.
Yeah, and it worked out. Right now it's my return to it. I have another show that I am working on producing right now, and people are wanting me to come back to, and understanding that I am a good guy, hadn't done anything wrong, and
man,
was a victim myself. So but I think that's a lot to say. We gotta watch out for cancel culture.
Yes.
It's a terrible thing, and we really brand people that had nothing wrong to do. And also, we empower a certain level of other type of people to use cancel culture in their power. So, yeah, a lot of learning lessons.
First and foremost, man, I gotta say, I'm sorry you ever went through that to begin with. I can only imagine the mental toll that took on you.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was the hardest points were when it came out, and being in this very deep depression. At this point, it's weird because I was in a very deep depression, doing a lot of drugs, but still, like, in service to philanthropy. So it was really weird because I was either in the jungles helping deliver, service and food or supplies, or going to these tribes, or I was at home just doing drugs, being fucking depressed, right? And I had to really get myself out of that, for a while. But it was really hard when the show came out and not being able to turn on, Netflix or television or go on my social media and seeing people mention it or it coming on. And then it was even harder that no one knew that it was partially mine, that I wrote that thing, that I developed that thing. and that my screen credit had gotten pushed to being just saying a little consultant because I was effectively canceled and no one wanted to stand beside me in those times.
Man, I am so sorry you went through that.
Oh,
I really am, especially like in the public eye. That's like a smear. It's not like a smear campaign. That is a smear campaign that you're fucking with somebody's life.
yeah.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that, bro. I am so sorry.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's my own fault too. I a bunch of things about what we do for our healing and ourselves now. We start understanding ourselves introspectively, and it's my fault because I had always put myself into a very vicious cycle with women of finding. I always had this hero aspect of myself, and feeling like I can heal someone or save someone else, or I don't know. And it's good for me to break the cycle of these damaged people that I think I can heal or help, that in the end always hurt me. And so, there's, as long as we learn from the cycles and learn from the lessons, that's what matters the most. So it was really tough and I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, I'm really kind of happy in a way, because I look on my life and I think like, okay, had that not happened and I had gone on to be a judge and kicked off my career back then, I wouldn't have helped uncover that ancient site in Mexico. I wouldn't have been the first guy lowered into that cave, on the Atlantean when we discovered these Atlantean stuff. Like I've had these experiences in such profound things happen with the leaders of the indigenous and been put into such a special position with them that I would never turn that away. And I became my own version of Indiana Jones with this work. And so it would never have happened had I had that not. So
my wife had just overheard me. She's been watching the podcast. She said, you have to heal and save yourself before you can heal and save others.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally what what they even tell you about in the plane. Whenever your plane's going down crashing, you got to put the mask on yourself first so you can save others. And so that's absolutely true. But a big part of that also too is some of us don't realize that we need that type of healing until we've gone through that cycle of the same thing over and over again, and then we kind of go, oh wait, sometimes especially us men, we have to be like shaken like babies, right?
Yes.
Know us. And for me, it's like, I didn't even know I needed that healing until, being 40 and looking back on it and going, oh, wait, I was in a cycle and I did that not just once, but with many women that were like that with me. And they were always, violent or abusive or something, not always, but many times. And that really traces back to my mother. And then starting, you have this like light switch in your head and you go, oh my God,
yes.
That's what it was.
You start understanding the patterns. And I always tell my kids this too. Like, they think, you're old, you don't know what you're talking about, and blah, blah, blah. And I go, I know I'm going to tell you this, and it may be different in your day and age, but the feelings and sometimes the gist of things, like, I've been through it. It may be different. Your scenario may be a little bit different than what I went through, but I can tell you already, once you hit this part in your life, like you're going to look back and go, I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much we think we are, when I was 20 some odd years old going into the first relationships of my life, I didn't think I was, damaged. I thought I was fine. I didn't think I was, going to enter into these vicious cycles of some wound I had to heal with my, you go into it like, ready.
You think you're Superman, like when you're stepping into those years.
I've got no problems, I can save anything. It's me that I'm projecting this on. And so, there's that.
I get it, man. 100%. It's like you got to hit that period where you step back and you look and you go, this all makes sense now.
Yeah.
This all makes sense. I've been through it too. I go through my patterns. I go, oh, that was because of my dad, or this was because of my mom. This is making sense now. Okay, this is, yeah, and that's what most people don't understand is like when you're in those moments of depression and anxiety and stress, those are the things that are in the moment. But once that moment steps away, that's when you start getting that clear head, about everything, and
Yeah,
that's when the light bulb clicks.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, not just a clear head. You get a clear head, and then after, like, there's that clear headedness, and then there's a point past it where you realize the entire incredible amount of wisdom that you gained from it.
Yes.
Yeah, you get clear headed, and then you go, huh, I really have a lot of wisdom for all this. Like, if I apply this empathy correctly, I have created a weapon. I have become stronger for this. So yeah, you're right. You get to that clear headedness, and then you get to the meat of why you went through it.
Yes.
You find your reason, your purpose.
And it's like all those events too, like everything that you're going through during those moments. Once it's all said and done, the dust clears. Not only does it make you stronger, but it makes you be able to just be able to say, pass that advice on to others. Once
Yeah,
you're out of it.
yeah. I mean, there's part of you that feels like a little bit more of a badass too. That you literally go, I can conquer this shit, and that you can be there for other people, right? That's why you finally feel like, man, I got this ton of experience well over these other people who've never experienced anything close to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let them have their negativity, let them have those things, because I have the power of empathy now, and
Yes.
and that's super important. So
Yeah, 100%. And like we were saying, that being in those moments too, and the clear headedness when you finally come through, and how it makes you stronger, you're able just to be able to just pass that knowledge on in your cool, calm collectedness after you went through it. And I truly mean it, it does make you stronger. It may not seem like it in the moment. You may feel alone, isolated, like nothing's working out. But as soon as that step happens, though, it's like a complete 100%, like a 180, a 180. You sit back and you go, you almost feel like, why did you do that to myself?
yeah,
But in those moments, you don't know why you did it to yourself because you were dealing with those moments.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. You're 100% right. And there's those little moments of liberation after those time frames, and having those realizations are super important to our character. Super
Hmm.
important.
It helps build us up. It helps build us up. That's for sure.
It really does.
All right. So if you were to give any advice to anybody out there, either, I'm not even going to say bartending, when it comes to like making your dreams happen, what would you tell them?
When it comes to what?
Making their dreams happen, what would you tell them?
Know your own velocity. Know your own velocity. And that means know whether or not how fast, velocity is our speed in a given direction, right?
Mm.
And knowing our velocity, whether it means that you know more than what other people know about the direction and the speed that you're going into something and sticking by that, to also knowing that, like, if when you're going too fast or in the wrong direction, that it needs to change, or you're pushing against what the flow is. And so to me, that's what's really important is to know your own velocity, so that you know what you're expected to do, and you don't drive away from that direction or that speed. And then also that no one else can affect you on your direction and speed too, and as long as you stay the course and you have a direction and speed, that's really important. So one would be to know your own velocity. That's actually what I would have said a long time ago too. Now, being the new version of me, I guess I would also say, it doesn't matter, that it doesn't matter what I would say to achieve success, because in the end, success is so different for each other, and success doesn't even really matter. So
It might not even be like the material things. It might just be the feeling inside that you finally achieve.
Yeah, and so to me, it's just about doing what you feel is your universal self, being your true self, being what you're supposed to do. So to me, that's what the most important thing is. Let success come and just be what you're supposed to be.
All right, so I gotta bring it back to Bar Rescue.
Yeah.
Was there ever an episode where you were like, "Oh shit, what am I doing here?"
I mean, that's like every episode.
but just that one. Just that one.
I mean, there's always the O face. The O face was such a crazy, that you're kind of that was one of those that you're all looking around going, what is going on here? Right?
Yeah.
So the O face one was pretty nuts. I that will always be one where you're going, these people are absolutely nut jobs. Like, what were they thinking to even thinking that they should be on TV and that they're doing this now, right? And
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the one where you're just kind of always going, holy shit, what was happening there? Yeah, that's definitely the one.
Okay. So here's one sticking with the Bar Rescue. Has John ever given you any advice that stuck with you that you would be willing to share?
That stuck with me?
Yeah. Or vice versa, advice you gave him.
Oh, I'm sure there's advice I gave him. I don't know. Him and I had a lot of deep conversations about different things and some interesting private interactions because I was his right-hand man on and off camera. So, for certain things for a little while there. But I nothing I can think of off the top of my head, but I definitely learned some lessons from working with him and that thing.
Okay.
And a lot of it had to do with more of just not lessons I'm being taught, besides lessons that I'm learning because of the situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just to see how someone was handling becoming famous in this industry as well, and being beside them, seeing what they were building of the empire they were building for themselves. Now, that being said, I wouldn't want to be John Taffer. I'm definitely a different type of person than him. And so there's definitely those things that I couldn't sacrifice or be that he has in order to be on television. Like I couldn't yell at people for as many seasons as they have, quite frankly. There was a point where I needed to
step away from the yelling.
Yeah, man. I needed to not be that. I needed to not cause that kind of stress in my own chaos. And it got to the point too where be honest, I didn't think that some of the things we were doing were right anymore. I didn't. I didn't like the fact that we were, what started out seeming very real was starting, because there was so much real drama that was made early on in the show, that it started to try to become replicatable, right? And I didn't think that, I didn't like that what it felt like was happening around us and the show and what was happening.
It was looking more for like an entertainment value.
Yeah, I couldn't feel. I was one of the guys that would constantly try to keep in touch with the staff or the people to try to help them after we left, so that we didn't just go in and shake up their lives and then walk away from it. And I believe that we did that too much. We went in there, we shook people's lives up like a hurricane, and then kind of left them. And I couldn't do that continuously.
That makes sense. I mean, you guys were there for what, 3-4 days, and trying to change the whole business around. I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, 5 days. And so what we did was good in 5 days, but I mean, some of that stuff takes more manicuring and
yeah. All right,
there's an extra moral code that I needed different, in my life.
Here's a question that's been brought up to me for years. People would always say, "Do you think that John he yells sometimes to add more drama to the show?" And I would say it's a possibility. I mean, I don't know. So I figure I'll ask you directly.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's also some people consider it to be a method of teaching or utilizing, but I don't think any human could get by in normal life yelling that much about those
Yeah.
things,
No.
So to me, it's definitely part of what is produced in for what that is.
Mhm.
And I hate to say it, but it also it says something to us about us as a culture that's what we want to watch.
That makes sense, man. Well, my friend, we are hitting the hour mark. I always try to stick with an hour.
Cool.
I gotta say this, man. It's been an absolute, excuse my language, absolute fucking pleasure being on here with you, man, and talking. Normally, when I'm on here, like I'll talk to different musicians or even professional wrestlers and stuff like that. Just kind of, open up and talk about mental health and entertainment value in certain aspects. But this is, I mean, it's the Bartender's Jukebox, so obviously talking to another like-minded individual, it goes pretty smooth. But the journey that you've had so far, man, anybody out there that has watched this, Wishka.org, definitely subscribe to it. Stay up to date with everything that Russell is doing because, I mean, it's starting off the conversation here and talking about, traditions and stuff like that with the indigenous people. Like, honestly, you have hooked me right now, and I am probably going to study more into this once this podcast is over. And if at any point in time you ever want to do something like this again with me, I would absolutely love it, man.
Yeah, I'll come on anytime, man. I'd love to come visit your farm sometime.
Definitely, brother. Definitely. I know we are a few thousand miles apart right now in Costa Rica
Yeah,
northeastern Pennsylvania,
yeah.
but yeah, man, I would definitely love to have you here.
At some point, man. So, honestly, I would love to check it out. And anytime you want me on, just let me know. And I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate that we did this. So.
Definitely, man. Because like I said, once I get off here, I'm going to be doing some studying up because I have a feeling me and you could really go into cultures and stuff like that. I think this could turn from an hour podcast into like a 3 or 4 hour podcast.
It's true.
Like I always say, everybody out there, thank you for tuning in to the Bartenders Jukebox podcast. I'm Mark. This is Mr. Russell Davis. Oh, there he is on this side. You've seen him on Bar Rescue, and you've seen the hit show Drink Masters on Netflix. And be sure to check out Wishka.org. Like I always say, stay thirsty for life, my friends. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.